Hey everybody, tonight's video is called Lions and Kings, and tonight we continue our pass-through study here in the book of Ezekiel, where we're going to be looking at the allegory of two lions and two kings. And this is totally different than what my friend Brian Peckham did for his Daniel study on Saturday with the Lion King. There's actually multiple lions and multiple kings that we're going to talk about here. In today's chapter, it's kind of like a poem dealing with the lament with the captivity of kings Jehoahaz in 609 BC, Jehoiachin in 597 BC, and the collapse of the Davidic dynasty under Zedekiah in 586 BC. So today's video is going to be fairly short compared to the last few of them. And we're going to be in Ezekiel chapter 19. We're going to open with verse 1. It says, "Moreover, take up a lamentation for the princes of Israel." So the princes of Israel here refers to the kings of Judah that we just mentioned. And this is a lamentation over Israel in Ezekiel's day in its condition. In verse 2 through 4 says, "And say, what is your mother, a lioness? She laid out among the lions, and among the young lions she nourished her cubs. She brought up one of her cubs, and he became a young lion. He learned to catch prey, and he devoured men. The nations also heard of him. He was trapped in their pit, and they brought him with chains to the land of Egypt." So the lioness, also known as mother, aka also known as Israel, or Jerusalem itself, who lay among the lions by taking her place in the community of nations. And one of her cubs, it's referring to Jehoahaz, who ruled in 609 BC and was deposed by the Egyptian pharaoh Necho after reigning only 3 months, as you can find back in 2 Chronicles chapter 36 verse 2 and 2 Kings chapter 23 verse 32 through 34. And so his reign was short, but it was known as an evil and brutal reign. In verse 5 through 9 says, "And when she saw that she waited, that her hope was lost, she took another of her cubs and made him a young lion. She roved among the lions and became a young lion. He learned to catch prey. He devoured men. He knew their desolate places and laid waste their cities. The land with its fullness was desolated. By the noise of his roaring, then the nation set against him from the provinces on every side, and spread their net over him. He was trapped in their pit. They put him in a cage with chains and brought him to the king of Babylon. They brought him in nets, that his voice should no longer be heard on the mountains of Israel." So another of her cubs is referring to Jehoiachin, carried to Babylon in a cage in 597 BC, as seen in 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 6 through 15. And his reign was 3 months, oppressive and unjust. And God used the pagan nations of Egypt and Babylon to judge the wicked kings. And the Babylonians kept Jehoiach in prison 37 years and released him at the age of 55, as seen in 2 Kings chapter 25 verse 27 through 30 and Jeremiah 52 verse 31 through 32. And Jehoiachin rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar. In verse 10 through 14, to finish the chapter, it says, "Your mother was like a vine in your bloodline, planted by the waters, fruitful and full of branches because of many waters. She had strong branches for the scepters of rulers. She towered in stature above the thick branches, and was seen in her height amid the dense foliage. But she was plucked up in fury. She was cast down to the ground, and the east wind dried her fruit. Her strong branches were broken and withered. The fire consumed them, and now she is planted in the wilderness, and a dry and thirsty land. Fire has come out from a rod of her branches and devoured her fruit, so that she has no strong branch, a scepter for ruling." This is a lamentation and has become a lamentation. So Judah prospered as a luxurious vine with strong power and eminence. And God plucked up the vine in judgment, desolating her, exiling her, and leaving her no strong king. And the blame for this catastrophe that came upon Judah is laid on one ruler alone, and that is Zedekiah, who's responsible for the burning of Jerusalem because of his treachery, as seen in Jeremiah 38, verse 20 through 23. And the house of David ended in shame, and for nearly 2,600 years, since Israel had no kings of David's line. And when the Messiah Jesus came, they rejected him and they preferred Caesar. And the Messiah still became their Savior and will return as their King. And as seen in Ezekiel 17, verse 9 and 10, the east wind is an instrument of Yahweh's will, as seen also in Exodus 10:13 and Ezekiel 14:21, Psalm 78 verse 26, Hosea chapter 13 verse 15, and Jonah chapter 4 verse 8. So the east wind brings the desert heat and will wither the vine, and Judah's pride leads to her uprooting, like the vine in chapter 17. And he gives a picture of a fruitful and strong kingdom. And from Zedekiah until Jesus, the royal line of David went underground. So to wrap up today's study, we look tonight at the lamentations of the lions, with a lamentation for the leaders of Israel. And verse 2 through 4 shows us the lioness and the mighty lion taken to Egypt. And I want to look at the book of Revelation chapter 5. And we're going to look at verse number 5. It says here, "But one of the elders said to me, 'Do not weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll and to let loose its 7 seals.'" So the New Testament looks for the Lion of the tribe of Judah to reestablish the kingdom of God. In verse 5 through 7 of Ezekiel 19 shows us the lion's second power. And verse 8 through 9 shows us the young lion's capture. Verse 10 and 11 shows the lamentation of the vine, of the fruitful vine. And the chapter ends with the vine being plucked up and planted in the wilderness. And that's going to wrap up our study. And it's not even a topical Saturday, and we're already wrapped up a chapter here. But we'll see you next, as we'll be looking at Israel's history of sin and God's history of mercy. So I hope you're able to join. I'll let you know when that video will be. God bless, and we'll see you for the next one.